Hey guys, it's Blair, the Love Guru from loveguru.net and the aliennetwork.com. And I am in the middle of editing my first book in this leadership series called The Rise of the Lightworkers, When You Know It Is Your Time. And this book makes me smile every time I read it because I wrote it during the early days of Con 19. I totally forgot that I wrote this book because I am always writing, and this book was just sort of tucked away, and the only reason why it came into my awareness was because a couple of weeks ago I was going through old Con 19 videos and making clips of them to republish on YouTube and BitChute. And in one of them, I was sharing this introduction section of this book, The Rise of the Lightworkers, the book one, When You Know It's Your Time. And so I was reading this introduction in this video, and I was like, oh, this is really interesting. I like what I wrote here. And I was like, what is this book? I like totally forgot about it. And I went through my files, and then Spirit was saying to me, like, hey, Blair, start editing this. We want you to put this out because I like I said, I'm writing all the time. It's just who I am. It's what I do. And I have a lot of books that I've written that have not been published yet. And there's some of like, so for example, like How Aliens Put Me Into Power, that's a 5-part installment. I have book one and book two out. And I was told to publish those actually during Con 19. So like when I'm reading through this book, The Rise of the Lightworkers, as at the same time that I'm writing this book, I was being guided by Zeke, who's my star brother, a reptilian alien from Sirius, was telling me, hey, edit your alien books and put those out. So what the reason why I'm sharing that is because I just put my books out when I'm like guided to go do it. It takes a lot of energy, even though the books are already all written and they're all channeled anyway. So there's not much editing that needs to be done with them. But they just kind of been sitting around. I have like, I don't know, maybe I have like my homeless books, which are maybe 3 or 4 books in the series. I have my marriage book, which is about healing childhood wounds. I have a book that comes after that, which has to do with something with unconditional love. So there's like, I have like various, and then I have like a book about, um, well, we'll just leave it at that. Anyway, the point is I have a lot of books like on, what's the saying? Like on dock or something like that, on deck. I have a lot of books on deck to be published. So I'm going through this book, The Rise of the Lightworkers, the first book in the series. And it's funny because when COVID first started, I fell into the disinfo campaign of Q. I was always suspicious about it, but like I did believe it for a bit, or like allowed myself to believe it a bit. And that was the time when people were reading the Q drops, and then there was like certain people who have a big following that of course YouTube was like bumping their YouTube views. They were sharing, breaking down all these like the Q drops and the meanings behind it, because those Q drops were like very cryptic. It was like the whole thing was like fucking weird. And I thought it was weird the whole time. I didn't stay in the psyop for that long. But anyway, so like throughout this book, it kind of makes me laugh because I'm like reading through certain excerpts that I was like totally believing in that they were going to do this what was the whole thing? Like the whole pattern interrupt on TV. And they were going to share like an 8-hour broadcast. I mean, I don't know if you remember any of these like fairy tales that were being told, but they were going to be broadcasting for like 8 hours, like all the crimes of the cabal, and they were going to broadcast it for everybody to see. So like, I forgot about all this. And there's no shame with me like that I fell for that, because look at when you're going down these different rabbit holes looking for truth, you are going to get sucked into these disinfo campaigns. All right. We all fall into these psyops. So there's nothing to be embarrassed about it. But I'm reading it and it's kind of funny. And something that was coming to mind was that I was having all these thoughts about how exciting that'll be to be able to talk to people on the street and for them to know like exactly all these conspiracy theories that because you've done all this research. And again, I'm talking to people who are awake, like again, early con 19 days, like you were already came into this whole like scamdemic, like awake. So you knew something was like fishy about what was going on. So I was like, just there's like, this book is about doing your mission, and it's very like contrary to how we have been taught to put ourselves out there, how to get into a position of power. And of course, it's contrary to that because everything that we've been taught in this matrix is wrong. So the book is like primarily about guidance that Zeke is sharing with me on um, how to do my mission in the world, how to get my message out, how to make my dreams come true, how to step into more of my power. It's a leadership book. That's why it's like part of this leadership series. At least that's what we're calling the series now. So anyway, I'm talking about on how I'm so excited that I can't believe you're going to be able to walk on the street and talk to people and everyone's going to know about these like quote conspiracy truths, and how everyone's going to be on the same page as you. And it's just so funny to be able to like read this book 5 years later, and that's actually true as far as like you are able, at least this is how I feel, I'm able to talk to anybody anywhere about any of these conspiracy quote theories, these conspiracy truths. That did come true. That is true. I don't feel like people look at you like you're weird anymore or crazy. I think that that's an old narrative. You can tell me what you think, what you've experienced, but I don't have that anymore. Like I can speak to anybody about anything and they're all about it. They know all about the deep state, thanks to Trump. But so all this stuff has been disclosed. But I was also writing about how, like, I was thinking that there was going to be mass hysteria, that if people learned about all these truths, that they were going to be outraged. And it's so interesting because people know about all the truths now. Like, I don't know if for some reason they're talking about the Epstein files again, which I thought that they said that they don't have the Epstein files. I don't really know how they brought it back around. I tuned out of that narrative, but, or I should say I tuned out of that psyop. But people know that our leaders are corrupt. They know so many dirty deeds that have been done. And it's just so fascinating because there's no outrage. I don't think there's any outrage at all. If you look at people, they're still going about their day to day. People still walk around like they've just conveniently forgotten about everything. Like they're just so hooked into the matrix, like hamster wheel, that no one's doing anything, which is part of the whole mind control also. But it's just fascinating to me. The whole psychology of it is fascinating. I go into more of this in my freedom activist classes. I break it down step by step, the psyops, and there's lots of resources on the aliennetwork.com in the Warrior Toolkit page, lots of audios, videos you could download. And I'm also doing a pre-order discount for the Rise of the Lightworkers when you know it's your time. If you're interested in that, if you feel a call to action now, now there's talk about the digital ID and giving away your biometric data. And, there's quote outrage with that, petitions being signed and protests and all that bullshit. So I know people are feeling the call from their soul to rise. And if you would like assistance on that, guidance on how to rise and actually make a positive and powerful impact in the world, then consider getting that book, The Rise of the Lightworkers. When you know it's your time, you could pre-order that on loveguru.net /books.